Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 12th live airing of Conversations with Cal, a series by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. We're really excited to have you here today, as usual, and thank you for attending. My name is Gabriella, and I'm a small business specialist here in the OSDBU. I do want to make just a few comments before I introduce my boss, who's then going to introduce our guests, actually. Firstly, you will notice that if you're not a presenter for this event, your microphone and camera are muted and cannot be unmuted unless done so by me. Conversations with Cal will be recorded and uploaded to our website eventually. We do that as quickly as we can. You'll notice we do have some already up on YouTube. If you search Conversations with Cal, you'll find it on the U.S. Department of Education's channel. But that's sort of a long-term project, so please be patient with us. In the interest of time, we're not going to have a question and answer session, but we do want to keep you engaged and we do want your feedback. Feel free to post things in the chat. And if you do have any suggestions about topics you want to hear more about, specific questions you'd like answered in a future session, or individuals you'd like to hear from as a small business, please do send us an email at small.business@ed.gov, and we'll be happy to consider any content for this series. Do keep in mind that all iterations of the series are interview-based in nature. You may submit questions in the chat. Again, we may or may not present them based on timing and flow. And then questions not answered today might be answered in a follow-up event. Now that you do have a better understanding of how this is going to go, I'm going to begin. I'm going to introduce you to my boss, Calvin Mitchell Jr., or Cal. Take it away, Cal.
Thank you, Gabby, for the introduction. And so hopefully this all works out well because I am actually operating from my phone because my laptop is not working today. I'm not sure if it's off or if it's going to come back to work, but it's temporarily not working for me. But it's okay because you know what we're doing? We're still having conversations with Cal. And my guest today is Mr. Wes Hester. He is the owner of Foxhole Technology, and he's got the guy who puts out the fires, literally, Gus Tume, who is here with us as well. Now, there's a little inside joke because Gus is actually a fireman. He moonlights as a fireman. So I want you to know a little bit about what we're doing. What we're doing here is understanding how you can build your business. The best way to learn is from someone who's done it before. Technology. All right. So what are we doing here, right? What is this? What is Conversations with Cal? Conversations with Cal is where we interview successful small businesses in the GovCon space. And those who know the GovCon space is not easy to navigate. So what we do here is we learn from those who have already made the mistakes, tripped up, figured it out, and now are thriving, successful businesses. And so Foxhole Technology is a very successful business and also a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. And just want to take the moment to thank you for your service to our great nation. And the way we work is we ask questions and we ask tough questions, right? Questions that the OSDBU Director can answer, right? Questions that are really the inside baseball to help you to really speed up your growth as a small business. So without further ado, Gus, I guess, Gus, do you want to introduce yourself first or do you want to start with Wes?
No, I'm happy to introduce myself. Gus Tomei, president of Foxhole. Really excited to be here today and look forward to the dialogue.
Yeah, and thank you. And I'm Wes Hester, CEO, founder of Foxhole Technology. Also excited to be here. This is our second time having this interaction. It's been great. So thanks everyone for letting us be here today. In addition, we have Frank Taylor, our growth officer. Frank, you want to say hello?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. I've been with Foxhole for now about a month. And, my mindset is all my questions are going to be geared towards how I can grow the footprint within Department of Education. So I look forward to this engagement.
Fantastic, fantastic, and welcome aboard, Frank. And I'm sure you're about to climb into the foxhole with everybody else. So let's start it off. Let's kick it off. So last time we talked about how you grew your business, and the one thing that I think, if those who remember our previous conversation, was really remarkable is the idea and the concept of culture, and creating a culture where everyone can really thrive and really be invested in the business. Foxhole Technology is a unique company where where the employees really have a share in the company, like literally, and that speaks to the culture, but also it speaks to the type of leader that Wes is. And a lot of times we have just the CEOs of the company, but Wes said, "Hey, no, Calvin, I need to have the president. I need to have my staff, because they're the ones that really helped me to build this company." So that's why we have the trifecta to include Frank and Gus. So let's start with the first question. The first question, do you feel that the area of expertise impacts your success in the federal government marketplace? For example, do you feel that having an IT business versus a management consulting business impacts your chance on attaining federal work? Can you talk a little bit about the business model that you focused on in terms of providing work specifically to the subject area that you really found like your bread and butter? A lot of companies sometimes struggle to find their identity. Can we talk a little bit about that, Wes, and Gus? You can chime in as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's, I guess when you're starting a business, you need to have some type of understanding of that trade or that craft that you're going to be building. So many times, people may say, well, hey, there's a lot of money or a lot of opportunities to be made in this type of business, but you really need to have some understanding of that. And the reason I say that is you've got to have past performance and maybe in yourself, and you've got to be able to focus on an area that provides that confidence that your clients and your employees will have in you as you move forward. Now, do you have to be an expert? No, you surround yourself with experts and people that really understand the business, but you have to have the foundational blocks of that business. We did not go into a plumbing business because I know nothing about plumbing, and I'm not an expert in that. Could we have managed it? Probably over time, but that's not our expertise. My expertise was in IT and cybersecurity, and so that's why we started the business around that. This approach, really drives what we're pursuing in contracts. We look at contracts that are in our core competencies, what we do, and we built our mission around that. Our mission statement for being a thought leader, offering robust suite of cybersecurity, software development, and systems engineering solutions for our clients. And that's kind of, we try to stay in those lanes. We don't want to deliver things that we can't have some expertise in. Early on, we had a lot of folks that came to us and said, hey, you're an SDBO. Let's sole source this janitorial services to you. And we're like, well, we're really not into doing janitorial services. The other thing, that would eat up your dollars as far as your small business size. So you've got to be careful there. You might have a lot of past performance then in janitorial services, but that doesn't really help you get where you're trying to get. So, I caution you on that because initially starting out, it's all about getting revenue and paying the bills, but you've got to be careful and try to focus on those core competencies that you understand and that your company stands for. So I don't know if that helps, Calvin.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you didn't do janitorial services, although you probably could have cleaned up. Gus, did you have anything you might wanted to add?
Yeah, sure. So to kind of build on what Wes said it is a very easy allure to be pulled into, especially when you're really, really small, getting started out, or get a couple small things under you, to be tempted to go after, oh yeah, we do satellite communications, and you have no background in satellite communications. You have, and it's because of your designation and being small that makes you a little bit more attractive. All of those things are distractions to where you're trying to go. All those things will take cycles out of your day to start to redirect you in a different way. You need to try to stay disciplined and stay focused. As Wes said, you got to pay the bills too. We totally get it. But each of those things are distractors from where you're trying to go. And so building a core group of partners, and that's why this conversation is extremely important, and staying close to the small business offices, because if you do get an opportunity that comes to you and they say, hey, we want you to use, for the janitorial services, not really in my wheelhouse. However, I got great partners that can pass along to you. And when you find those good partners, they will help you out as much as you help them out, especially keeping close to the small businesses offices, because they're a great component for that. So just remember that each of those things that it might be tempting, but it's a distraction from where you're trying to go.
Yeah, and I think that's an easy thing that tends to happen, right? I'll meet someone and they'll say, hey, I do IT, construction, and I'm like, wait, how is that possible? How many people do you have? Well, it's just me and my sister. I'm like, wait, that might you might want to focus in a little bit, because the danger from the government side is if we put you in a position to do something that you don't have the experience with, it generally reflects pretty negatively on the company, but also the small businesses, right? And Wes and I talk about this all the time, right? A lot of times there's a lot of work that goes behind doing set-asides, right? And the government sometimes sees it as risk, even though it's something we're supposed to be doing, right? So I always say, if you as a hub zone aren't successful, it hurts every other hub zone that may come behind you.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not successful as a service disabled veteran on small business, it can hurt every service disabled veteran business that came behind you. And why is that? Not because there's a perception that everybody's bad, but for some reason, that's how it happens in the government. And as much as we're changing the narrative, as much as we're working hard, it's really critical for you to hone in on that core competency. Go ahead, Wes, if you want to.
Yeah, I was going to say, early on, we had someone approach us at DHS and said, we want to sole source you a contract for administrative support services for like 80 different facilities around the globe. And you'd have maybe one or two people at each one of these. And it sounded really attractive, but the rates were, very low. And we looked at that and said, there's a lot of risk, because I found that sometimes it takes as much time to manage, or actually more time to manage someone at a lower rate, and they have more challenges than someone that's more high end. So that we turned that down. But and plus we would have been running all over the place for low rates, but we would have had all these people out there and made a little money, but it would have been really draining on the company, and that's not what we do. So this challenge,
it goes back to what you were talking about the last session, right? You want to grow strategically, and Gus has grown several companies strategically. He's even worked at large business where he see the best work is grown strategically, right? And I get it, right? Because you have a family, maybe you have elder care that you have people that you're caring for, you have a family to support, and being patient doesn't pay the bills, right? So a lot of times that discipline can be very uncomfortable, but it's necessary, right?
Yeah, and going back to your comment there about, the targeted domain that you try to find yourself in, the differentiator between someone who's just putting butts in the seats and, a staffing agency is really, how do you build that, the IP, the intellectual property, things that you uniquely do? I mean, there's a lot of people who can do the same thing, but you may have a unique way of doing that. Build your processes, your tactics, your techniques. Maybe if you can develop a solution set, we've actually developed some things in our lab that the government's now using that are unique to, the way we do things or the way they do it. So that differentiates you. So look at those things also.
Yeah. So real quick, we have a new guest. Just real quick, can you talk a little bit about your the employee share ownership in the company before we pivot?
Sure. So we stood up a ESOP and decided give back to our employee base. We had folks who had been with us from the get-go, and also for retention and for bringing folks on, we thought this was an excellent idea. We've watched other organizations, do ESOPs, and this was our way to do that. It also, just to be fair, we had a couple of older owners in the company who were, ready to retire, so this gave us a way to cash them out, if you will. What we found is the ESOP has allowed us to grow the company with folks who want to stay. It's skin in the game. Not only a salary, not only your bonus, your 401k, but now you've got shares in the company. And so we think that's a force multiplier for our company, and we've been real excited. Gus, I know that Gus was responsible for really standing this up. Gus, I don't know if you want to add something to that, or if I said something wrong.
No, you didn't say anything wrong, boss. I think the key thing here is we all know it's a real tight labor market. We all know that, when you're competing in this space and looking for employees, trying to come up with innovative ways to attract and retain that talent, it can be a real challenge, whether you're small or large. And one of the key things that was, really when Wes brought me on, it's like, I really want to take the company a different direction. We've gotten to this point, but I really need help building it to the next level. And how do I reward my employees? In fact, that's one of the big things that I want to make sure that for all the people who got me here, and help shape Foxhole to what it is, how do I incentivize that? And so the ESOP in itself became a mechanism it's like one stone that hit 4 or 5 birds at the same time. And there's a lot of things I can talk about the ESOP, but one key thing I can say, as Wes pointed out, it's skin in the game, it's shares, and it even goes beyond that. They get an ownership stake in the company. They don't get profit distribution per se, like PSUs, but what's really attractive to them is when the company does eventually have an equity event, they get cashed out, and they have the option to be able to either roll that into their 401k or their retirement plan at no tax hit. So they don't have to pay taxes on that because it's going toward their retirement, or they can take it as regular cash, depending on what part in the stage in their life is. They starting a family, they probably need the cash. If they're focusing on retirement, now, I'll take it and not have to pay the taxes associated with it. And that's a huge retention piece that has been a great benefit for Foxhole in attracting talent.
Hey, that's great. That's great. And I think it's important, right? Because again, it talks about this whole culture, right? And I'm not sure if it's your military experience, Wes, that really has you leading forward in the foxhole, as they say, right? And really investing in the company and the culture of the company. Now, last time we talked about how you got that first prime contract, but we also talked about how subcontracting was your base before you got that prime contract, right?
Right.
So can we talk a little bit about your service-disabled veteran-owned small business?
Mm-hmm.
How has that program helped you? I was just in front of some new VIP graduates maybe 2 weeks ago, veterans in procurement, I think it is, VIP, through Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. If you don't know about that program, look it up. It's a great program. And there was about 50 companies that are looking to start a service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. Can you talk a little bit about how that certification has helped you? Because there are other people who are certified in other ways, and talk about how you may be able to have leverage that to get to get some of those contracts.
Yeah, no, thank you. Leading, what we do as a business, we never lead that we're an SDVO, give us money, or if you're an 8A or so forth, you don't lead with that. We really lead with our capabilities, but we do take advantage of the fact that we are an SDVO. That's something that you've earned, you've worked for, you're entitled to that in a sense. So we do use that in a positive way. We use that, we join organizations like AFCEA, the ACTA, and the FAA, the National Veteran Small Business Coalition, and there's many more. They have training programs for veteran companies. They also have mentor protege programs. We were a mentor protege under IBM at NGA, and quite frankly, they did that primarily because we were an SDVO and they get credit for that. But you take advantage of that and you use it the best you can. We got our CMMI, ISO certifications under that program, for instance. There's many primes that are shopping because they have to have small business plans or contracts for the right partners. But again, you don't want to lead with that. You've got to lead with your capabilities, and you've got to have something that distinguishes you. But you can take advantage of that. We also look to other small SDVOs to help shape opportunities. And I'd be happy to talk to anyone about that, or if any of you on the line want to reach out further, how we can shape using the Rule 2, where we can get in front of the small business office and the contracting office and say, here are two companies that can do this work, and we know it's out on large business right now, but we should make that a small business acquisition. And that helps Calvin and other small business directors out there, because they can't go to their boss or head of contracting and say, make this a small business set aside for SDVOs if they don't have some paperwork to show that there's 20, 30, or at least two that have submitted RFIs or responses. So for us, it's been a positive thing. I can't really say it's been negative. I mean, other than sometimes folks look at you like the only reason you're getting that work is because you're an SDVO. And as to Calvin's point, we have excellent CPARs. We strive to really make that client successful, and in every case, and that comes through. And I think the things that you as an SDVO had when you were in the military, that same drive, that same focus, as morals, ethics, all that carries over into what you do for your clients now. So it was positive.
Yeah, I always say that it's amazing to me how unsupportive we are for service disabled veteran-owned small business. I often talk about my father, who we've spoken about before, who was wounded in Vietnam, and just how long it takes to get certified, to get to get your disability, to prove your disability. I mean, it might have been 30 years, maybe 25, for my dad to get his disability, right? And that is not something that is unusual amongst veterans, right? So to me, I really feel like it's the least we can do, right? For the service of the country and for what our veterans have sacrificed, so we can have the freedoms that we enjoy every day. So again, thanks.
Hey, Calvin.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Gus. Can I build on something that Wes said, because I think it's important for the folks that are here. So since you just kind of built on the last conversation and meeting we had, it's important that I wanted to highlight the fact that Wes said something extremely instrumental, and Calvin's been kind of pushing on it as well. And I consistently challenge our staff here at Foxhole. You have to answer one key question. And that question is, why Foxhole? So why company A? Why company B? And to Wes's point, and from a small business perspective, is if you have to be able to address that question of how you're going to be a differentiator, because you don't want the work just because you're an 8A, or you just don't want to work because you're a hub zone. As Wes pointed out, it's a great augmentation and it's certainly a great door opener, but don't lead with that. Really set yourself apart, because in the other pieces, as Calvin pointed out, how we started it, and it is really the best way to start, is to align yourself with the small business offices, brand yourself to them as a competent organization, because the government makes an investment in you when they award you a contract, right? The same thing happens when you're working with other companies and you're saying, hey, I'm a small and I want to work with you, whether it's a mid-tier, whether it's a large or another small business. So you got to ask yourself that question: what do I bring to the table, and how do I brand myself? We do great quality service, that integrity, that honor, that delivery, focused on the customer, focused on the mission. All those things are very, very key, because if you're just there as an 8A, you're just there as an SDVOB, what ends up happening is you run the large potential of being, marginalized out, especially with other big, large companies. They'll just use you for your status, and most of the time, you won't get what was promised to you. right? So you really need to focus on, they need me, and here are the reasons why they need me. Here's the things I can do for not only the person that I'm partnered with, but also the organization and the mission that I'm trying to support. And sorry, Calvin, I didn't mean to jump in. I thought it was really important to make sure to build on what the two of you said, that as you're trying to build out your small business, you really need to identify, here's where I can make impact. And that's part of that selling point, right? And part of that stickiness that you get with either the government or a partner that you're partnering with.
That's fantastic comments. Fantastic comments. I want to pivot a little bit. So, in the last conversation, we talked about how you got your first prime contract. Can you bring that up real quick? And then I want to talk about how you've grown personally and in terms of the business goals. You're a family man, right? And you talked about, hey, missing baseball games or missing out on some of those things, right? And I'm just interested to hear how your personal and business goals have evolved, because we need to know that, right? We're people at the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
At the end of the day, we're people, right? And so we have families. So how have your personal and personal business goals have evolved and grown, and how's your approach to federal contracting grown since that first prime contract? So can you start with, this is how we got the first prime contract and how you kind of evolved, if you will?
Yeah, I retired out of the military. I was actually at DISA, Defense Information Systems Agency, and retired there and thought, golly gee, I'm going to go back in there and have prime contracts handed to me. Didn't happen there. It was actually 3 years and a few more before we actually won our first prime contract at DISA, because any folks who, you retired organization, while they may be your friends, they're all afraid that there's going to be a perception, and it's warranted. So, but our first prime contract was actually at the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and it was on the EFAS contract. And so we actually on a flimmy thing, I submitted an EFAS contract and won it. And we had, never worked at the FAA. And then we worked a task order there and found out that we had some folks who had been on the DoD side that recognized us, and that's how we won our first prime contract. Now, in doing that, Calvin mentioned about the sacrifices. I often ask folks who sometimes approach me and go, I'm thinking about starting a business. I just retired out of the military and I want to start a business. Or, and I always ask them the question, well, tell me a little bit about your life. And, if they tell me they've got a brand new newborn or they got, small kids, and, I'm like, here are the things that are going to be impactful. You're going to be running around. And unfortunately, when you're first starting out in business, that is your life. I mean, it's tough. I'm not proud of it, but I missed anniversaries. I missed birthdays. It was really tough. I would fly somewhere to meet with a government client. We'd have a meeting and I'd get that, I'm sorry, he's busy. Can you come back next week? And I'd flown in, I can't tell you how many times that happened. So there were so many sacrifices that you make early on, but it takes that to start a business. Our first 2 years in business, I couldn't take a paycheck. Here I was paying folks, $150,000 a year, and I couldn't take a paycheck. And my wife's going, what the heck did you get us into? So there's sacrifices you make as you go through that. But if it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Starting any business is not a marathon. Or it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. You've really got to, have a deliberate way of doing it and just continually do it. And if you do good stuff and you build a good reputation, it'll be successful. I think using the tools that are out there and folks like Calvin, the PTACs, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, SCORE, the other organizations, you need that. Even other small businesses, talking to them. You need to find an ecosystem that helps support you and kind of prop you up as you go through it. And there's a lot of dinners, a lot of breakfasts, a lot of meetings. I can't tell you how many times I had 6 a.m. breakfasts, and Gus will tell you I'm up early, and then late night dinners with clients or potential partners, trying to build it up. And then and that was just me initially. And then as you grow, you have great people that you can bring on the team like Gus and Frank, and you build out your organization. But as you're starting out, it's a lot of running, a lot of sacrifices.
Hey, thanks for being very open and candid about that. Because I tell people, hey, I had spoken to someone and she was like, "Hey, my goal is to get a contract by the end of the fiscal year," and I was like, that's extraordinary, but it may not happen. And I just want to set your expectations because this is a relationship business. And I think it's very important for people to recognize that it may not happen immediately. And that's why I also say don't bank with Bank of America or some other these companies. Go to people who know GovCon contracting because
Yeah.
right? Because when you're trying to ramp up and you're trying to grow, you want to go with people who know budget cycles, who knows how procurement cycles work, and all of this. Gus, did you have anything you wanted to add in this thought?
Yeah, I can tell you, having worked with a lot of small companies and grown them from very very tiny to well over several $100 million. What Wes's story is in his where he got to where he is with Foxhole is not an unusual story. In fact, it's very common. And I see people all the time, to your point, Calvin, who say, "I just started a new business, and here's my goals. Gus, would you review where I'm at?" And they have in their forecast and their plans that they're going to win their first prime contract within the first year, right? I'm going to have my first prime contract. You're setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment. Not to say that it couldn't happen, but as I said earlier, it's a big investment when the government makes you an award like that. Even with your designation, it's a big investment because, it can have a lot of collateral damage to the small business office, to the mission, to the partners, if you can't perform. And if you go, well, I've got big company X and company Y behind me, I'm going to be successful. Well, then you're not really the one doing the work, are you? You're really being propped up by somebody else, and there's a lot of risk that you may not be able to perform, and you're going to have the black eye over it. And so, it's real important to set that expectation. And as Calvin and Wes pointed out, the first couple of years you need to be working the relationships, get close to your small business office, brand yourself, focus and keep that focus. And then start building those relationships to get that, they feel comfortable. As Calvin said, it's a very relationship driven component, and getting comfortable. And then the second piece, I'll just end with this, is that Calvin's right. Do not go to the big banks. Go to small local banks. Go to local providers, because they're going to sweat you on, well, you said you're going to have this. They don't understand the government cycle at all. And banking is a very critical component of making sure when you do win that first contract, you're going to need money to help float payroll. You're going to need money to help pay insurances and things along those sides. And so all those are very, very important pieces to keep in mind.
Kevin, I'd like to add something on top of what Gus said about the banking. If you're not having lunch with the VP of the bank or the president of the bank at least a couple times a year, then you don't have that strategic relationship, and you want to find a bank that you can do that with, because you're in it together. If there's a crisis or something, you've got to be able to go to that banker. And we've had that happen. We've gone to our banker and said, "Listen, we know we've only got a line of credit of X, but we need a line of credit, 5 times that much or 10 times that much," and they've worked with us. Our bank had actually, with everything that's going on right now, actually lowered our interest rate, which is unheard of, but that's the relationship we have with them. Gus is actually with our banker next week and on a trip. So we've got that kind of relationship. And they, if we're successful, they're successful. So you've got to build that relationship. And, some of the larger banks are tougher to have those relationships. So find a bank that's, that's a right fit for you or your company, and, get the right, credit line in, get the right things in place with them. The other thing is, with the current interest rates going up, it's crushing a lot of our small business friends. We have partner companies that are paying 12 points right now because they've got a prime plus X, and that's crushing banks. I was talking to the small business office, Carlin, at DISA about this, and the head of contracting. We usually have an escalation in our contracts of X percent, but we're losing money if we have to borrow money because that escalation doesn't keep up with the current interest rates and what's going on with the economy. So, we're losing money if we borrow money because our escalation is maybe 1%, and we have to borrow money at X, which is maybe 10%. So that's something that we're lobbying right now to try to get contracting to put something in there to, tie it to prime. If the prime goes up, then our escalation needs to go up. So that's something to think about. We're writing a couple white papers on that. So anyone else wants to join on that, we'd ask you for your help or your thoughts.
Yeah, and a lot of times my OSDBU colleagues are like, why are you talking about banking and financing and those things? Well, let me tell you something. If my goals are going up, I need to make sure that my industry base knows all the resources so they're able to scale with us, right? Because the worst thing we can do is put small businesses in a peculiar position by not making sure they have the resources and the understanding of all aspects of business, right? And then, so I want to transition a little bit, and thanks for being really open about that first contract, and again, those connections are everything. But if you harken back to our last conversation, and oftentimes I tell small businesses, hey, federal contracting, a good place to start is subcontracting, right? And for new businesses that are first entering the federal space, I say start with subcontracting. But there are some challenges, right? And I don't want to be ignorant of that. And I want to make sure that our folks know what those troubles, those challenges might have, so that when they're working with subcontractors, they're not being bullied or muscled or hoodwinked or whatever that might be. What are some insights that you have as working with those large subcontractors or even small to small, right? What are some insights that you may have? Because this is a very critical part, because I tell a lot of businesses, hey, look, starting out, it might take you a year to get certified, right? It might take you, I think the women-owned small businesses, certification is running at least 90 days, right? And then if you want to get on the GSA schedule, what is it, 2 years of business, right? So it's a process. But I always say subcontracting is always a good place to start, because I have larges. I had to meet them at one yesterday. Hey, they got an appetite for small businesses, but they want to know who I know that I would recommend, right? But I want to hear from your perspective of what they should be aware of when entering in some of these subcontracting, and what should be some things that they can avoid.
Yeah, I'll take the first part of that, and then I'll ask Gus or Frank to jump in. When we go into a new agency or even existing agency, we always meet with the small business office, the contracting office, and then hopefully the mission partners doing the work. Those three legs of the stool, and build that relationship and find out who their current partners are, large or small. And a lot of times a new agency, a strategy would be that you're not going to be able to prime, but you want to be able to sub. So you would find, who are the large primes who have a reputation for doing well in that organization, and maybe set up a meeting with them, talk to them. Now, they're going to be wanting to use you because of your socioeconomic status in a lot of ways. But, the thing that you've got to try to be careful about is not just signing a teaming agreement, or if they win a sub K that says we're on your team. We've got to literally, if you come over to our office, I'll show you a bookcase at about 10 by 10, and it's full of contracts that we won, but we've never done any work on, because wow. We were naive, starting out, had even best friends who were at these companies that promised us work share, but it wasn't in writing. And so that's a key thing. No matter if it's your brother at a company, I hate to say it, make sure you get it in writing, because I've had many a friend say, Wes, I'm really sorry, but the VP or the president of the company says that I know we promised you we'd give you work share, but we really need to take this down, or the investors are saying this, so you're on the contract. Maybe we'll find something for you in a couple of years, but but have it in writing. Make sure everyone understands. That way there's no breakdown in expectations. So I just caution you on that. And then when if you're a prime, if you're a sub, once you have it in writing, get the details and make sure you've met with some leadership in that company. We kind of have a rule that anyone we go into business with, we want to meet, the leadership. We don't want to just sign up and, it might be a cup of coffee or a donut or whatever, but you've got to meet and see the whites of people's eyes and get to know people, because you don't want to just be, pasted on a proposal and that's the only way they know you. So that's very important. But, the other thing on subcontracting is they're going to try to push you down your rates. They're going to tell you you've got to have a wrap of like 1.4 or 1.3. And, as a small business, you can argue that, because you don't have a corporate insurance plan and you're not able to pay your own insurance, that your rates may be a little higher. So be careful about, low bidding rates with your primes, because they're going to try to push you down thinking that you're small and you have no operating cost. But you do, in some cases, more, because you can't get the deals that they can get with their size. The more direct labor you have, the lower your wrap rate is. It's not the other way around. So those are things to think about. Gus, or Frank, like to add anything to that?
No, Wes, you hit the nail on the head. In my 25 years of experience selling into the federal government, I always made my first stop was always either the OSDBU office or the SADBU office, because I think that is you want the SADBU or the OSDBU representative on your side to echo the message that you're trying to deliver, because stakeholders within any government agency, they will stop past the OSDBU office or SADBU office and say, hey, we're looking for an SDVOSB or an 8A to do X. And you might have stopped by that office at the right time, the right day, and it's like, oh, I just met with Foxhole Technology yesterday or last week, and there you go. So that's always been my my method to selling into the federal government, whether you're seeking a prime contract or a subcontract. But then you also, my role is also to do my homework, find out what schedules or what vehicles does the Department of Education use. Are they CISP3 savvy? Are they VETS2 or OASIS savvy? Understand what vehicles are notorious for within that agency, and then find out what prime contract vendors are on that vehicle, and then do your homework and your marketing from there. Yeah. But no, that I just wanted to piggyback on what you said, Wes, as far as the person who's responsible in identifying net new opportunities. That's my my mode of how I go about pursuing opportunities, sub or prime opportunities within government agency.
Good stuff.
Gus, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think, again, not to belittle the point, it's important to understand that everyone's in, this is going to be a terrible thing I'm going to say, but I need to say it. Everyone's in the business to make money. Everyone's in the business to make a profit, right? The government's in the business to deliver a mission and not spend too much money, right? So when you get into that, when you're dealing with partners, as an example, to Wes's point, they're going to try to drive you down. They're also going to try to minimize you. They're going to say, well, yeah, listen, we're really tight on this, really tight on that. And this is where branding yourself and really being confident in why you are what you are and what benefit you bring. Being close to the small business office and being known in that community gives you chips and things to be able to broker with, to say, hey, wait a minute, when those larges or go to the small business office, say, hey, who would you recommend? Who do you think is a good player? By getting that endorsement, because you have the confidence of either the end customers or if you've built those relationships with those partners as well, it gives you credibility. It gives you that ability not to be pushed down and being used as just, oh, well, they're the 8A that we need in our small business plan. They're the small SDVOB that we need in our business plan. It's vitally important that you keep that and keep that in the forefront, because if not, they're going to push you in a corner and they're going to promise you a bunch, is what Wes said. Even at Foxhole, we have a binder, several binders, in fact, of all of these contracts and all these things we've been added to with lots of promises. Oh yeah, we went with you. You'll see, we're going to take care of you. And it's no revenue, no growth ever attached to any of them. It's a lot of unfortunate. I'm sure the intention was probably there at some point, but as Wes pointed out, also a lot of times if you don't get it in writing, it's not guaranteed. That most of the time the incentive is that they're going to maximize their profit on their end, and so it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Another question, and thanks for discussing that, because again, that's the inside baseball of subcontracting, right? A lot of times these are things that you don't hear on panels, and I really wanted to have this discussion because there's a lot of times that I've hear subcontractors fall into pitfalls, right? And then they come to me as the OSDBU, but you know what? I don't have privy of contract, right? We don't have a relationship with the subcontractors. Our relationship is with the prime. So I wanted to provide you with as much information as possible so you go into it eyes wide open, right? And so that you're able to really look at the process and be able to navigate the process and know what ability you have to navigate. So, Gus, Wes, you talked a little bit about government programs. What are some programs that you would recommend to help you as you're engaging in federal contracting? Which ones do you find particularly useful? You talked a little about that mentor protege program, and you talked a little bit about partnerships, because I tell people all the time, partnerships are very important. And just let's start there. And I know you're a schedule holder. If we can weave in there whether or not the GSA schedule is a good option.
Sure. Yeah. So there's for service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, veteran-owned programs. There's great organizations that you need to look at. I think the National Veteran Small Business Coalition has been probably the most helpful for us. Scott Jensen runs that, and a lot of ties, and I've used him to help lobby things and this, get advice and so forth. The PTAC that you have in each of your universities, George Mason, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center has been really good for that as well. And I guess they've changed to Apex. I'm dated here. They've rebranded. I think it's called Apex now. But and I'm not sure what Apex stands for, but it's the PTACs. And then
I don't think it means anything. I think they thought it was cool.
yeah. I don't know. PTAC worked for me, but and then depending on what agency you're looking at, like for Department of Defense, AFCEA has been a great one, and they have breakout sessions and breakout activities for SDVOs and events. ACTA for the FAA. So there's agencies, agency specific type of organizations as well. And then, the small business office, you can't forget that these guys are on our side. They're our liaison. They're not going to do anything illegal and say, here's a contract or here's inside information. But they're going to help point you and direct you. And seminars like this that Calvin's setting up, there's other agencies that have similar things. It's important to get in the mix. I mean, someone once told me that you don't build a relationship when there's a crisis. You want to have that relationship so that if I need advice, I can reach out to Calvin, or I can reach out to, Yvette or someone, and I need some advice here because you're our small business person, and give me that advice. So, and other businesses too. We have other relationships with other businesses that we sometimes get advice. We are a protege under Tetra Tech, which is a large business. We were a protege under IBM. So we reach out to Tetra Tech often and say, what about this? Or we've asked them questions about accounting systems, about, how do we get our approval for this? And they've been most helpful. So, just remember, no person's an island here. We've got, you got to work together to get that assistance. And you build that coalition of partners, both big, small, and the agencies and your small business office. We actually, one small business office asked, and I don't know, Calvin, if you're open to this, but every time we submit an RFI, they want us to CC them, so they know that, and a couple times they've told us, we didn't realize this was coming out for procurement. Thanks for sending us the RFI. But it helps them to do their job too, to go back to contract and say, hey, you need to make this a set aside because look at all the RFIs that came out.
Yes, I do ask people to do that actually, because It's good for me to know. because I try to stay engaged, and if I can try to track it and advocate, that's what I do. Gus, did you have any thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I would say that the big thing to kind of expand on it a little bit is I like what Wes said is no man or no person is an island, right? And that's a very, very true statement. I would also say it's the same thing. We're making investments in your company at the right time and at the right stages. So some will go out there and say, well, I need this technology. You're going to have all kinds of vendors. They're going to come to you and say, well, you need this product if you want to get in government contracting. You need this and you need that. There are definitely some tools that you will need, right? But scale it with where you are in the organization. Because I've seen a lot of small businesses come up and say, well, I went and bought, a great relationship with, I hate to beat them up because they're a great product, but Salesforce.com, and whatnot. And then they end up spending a lot of money on a tool they didn't necessarily need right away. With that being said, it's a balancing act. You also need to invest in the business. And so as you start to see you're scaling, you also need to make sure you're making the right investments in that. And so same thing goes with your time. Same thing goes with who you're investing your time into. And again, being close to the small business, the relationships with other organizations and things, those are all vitally important as well.
Yeah, let me add something to that about, Gus hit on a very good point there about, it's a balancing act. You can't have everything. And so, when we first started out, there were 3 of us. And so our CFO managed contracting, legal, all that fell under him. We had someone who did marketing, HR, recruiting, it all fell under her. And I did business development and technology. And so you kind of break it out. And then if you were to look at our org chart today, we have people doing that, I rank on the growth, so forth. So it's a scaling act. And when do you invest and what tools do you bring in? We early on purchased a financial system that we intentionally wanted it to be DCAA compliant. So we didn't want to have to do our financial system twice. So we purchased one that could grow and scale. That was, I was told by folks, you don't need a strong CFO. You don't need all that. All you got to do is have some technical folks and you'll go make some money. Well, a lot of companies try that and they implode because they can't scale. So always be thinking, how do you scale? How do you grow the company? And the other thing is early on, I recognized that, I was an Army guy coming out, never ran a business, done any of that. So I thought, well, okay, the same guy that maybe can start a company up is not the same guy that can take it where it needs to go. So through my friendship with Gus and relationship, that's why Gus is there, because he's had those experiences of growing a company and taking it to the next level. So you've got to recognize that, at some point you've got to have help. You can't do it all by yourself. So think about scalability.
Hey, so Gabby, I'm gonna beg for 3 more minutes. I know we're close to time, but I want to get this last one in because I hear this a lot. Gus, you good with 3 more? Gus, Wes, you good with 3 more minutes? Sure. Frank? Okay. As you know,
absolutely,
small businesses often have limited capacity, right? So you started with 1. How many people do you got now? Just so the folks know.
So we're over 160 and about 40 subcontractors on top of that. And I always bug I bug our CFO and kind of make a point every time we have a meeting about the 40 because, subcontractors are great, but it's better to have, more organic people. It keeps your wrap rates lower. So the more subs you have. So we're massive, about 200 folks, and we're spread across 19 states right now and plus overseas.
So there was a time where you had limited capacity, right, to respond to requests for information, and some of those sources sought notices due to capacity and size constraints. What would you recommend for small businesses to prioritize their approach to the government?
Well, RFPs or responses are always the priority. I mean, you've got to get that in because if you don't put those in, if you never ask, you're never going to win, right? And so you got to put those in. But you've got to do that in a deliberate manner. So many people come to me and say, "Hey, we saw that there's an RFP out for doing cybersecurity support at our agency X, and we think you should, but we don't have the vehicle. Will you guys prime it? We'll be behind you." Well, we have a bid no bid process we go through and ask questions like, do you have customer intimacy? If the answer is no, well, that's a ding. Do you know what their budget is? And the answer is no, that's a ding. Do you know what their weak points are? if no. And a lot of times we get those calls and we go, that's great. Or people see this out on the wire as the first time they've seen it. If you're not working that opportunity, say a year out, and perhaps going in and meeting with the small business office like Calvin, meeting with the end customer, maybe with a white paper or a presentation, or showing them what you're doing, you're really missing out. You're probably not going to win it. Every now and then you'll win one of those what we call blue herrings, but chances are you're spinning your wheels. And you could have the best solution you're doing at Department of Homeland Security, but if you've never met with the folks at the VA and they have no awareness of you, and you just submit a proposal blind, your probability of win is low. And a lot of times you'll even have companies that'll say, I'm the incumbent, but I can't bid this. And so will you prime it and I'll sub to you and we'll win this thing. And then you start asking the question, why did the government move it away so they can't bid on it? Is there a reason for that? And then what was their CPAR? So we ask companies for their CPARs. Can you provide me an example of your CPARs while you've been doing work there? And if they refuse to do it, that's another indicator. And so, it costs time and effort, as Gus said, to bid proposals. And, it's an effort for your recruiting, or for your pricing folks, your CFO, for your technical folks. Everyone has skin in the game here. So, you only have so many cycles. You don't want to throw a lot of them at, what I call empty calories. You want to win some muscle. so you got to be, due diligence here. But you have to submit those RFIs if you can. And sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but you got to get them in, because that's a ticket for you now to go see them. A lot of people don't realize it, but when the government's asking for an RFI, if the proposal's not out, they can meet with you. You can help shape it. For instance, we had a proposal one time that came out, and I saw throughout the proposal stuff that we had written. And I'm like, and we bid on it, and guess what? We won. but because the client, when I was on the government side, I would tell you, and Calvin, you probably said the same thing. I knew whenever a proposal went out, I knew probably within 10% of who the 1 and 2 people were that were going to win that proposal. Not because I was cheating, it's because I'd done market research, I knew what we wanted, and those people had intimacy of what I wanted, so they wrote a proposal that was what we wanted. And that's not cheating. That's doing good capture, that's doing good shaping and good marketing with your client. So hopefully that helps.
Gus, did you have anything before we close it out?
Yeah, I would say, all in all, buckle your seatbelt, because it's a great ride. It has its ups and downs, which is why you need to wear your seatbelt. And as Wes pointed out, it's not a sprint. And if you come into it with that mindset, you're going to be very disappointed. You need to be in for the long haul. You need to brand yourself, and you need to establish good partnerships. And that's where I kind of want to leave it with, is a partnerships not just with partnering companies and a small business office, but build a relationship cadre, people who can help you with business development, that can help you with the back office, help you with banking and financial and contract decisions, because no person is an island. They're really not. And when you build those relationships, they will pay dividends in helping you shape your company and help shape the direction that you're trying to go, so that you can focus on your business. Because at the end of the day, when the government invests in you, it's about making sure you deliver what you've promised and what they need. By the same token, you also need to invest in yourself and your employees. And it sounds like, it's a big, well, everyone needs an investment. Well, it's true. It's not an easy thing. It's not like you stand up a store and you buy product and you put it on the shelf and someone walks by and says, "Ooh, hey, I'll take 3 of those." You're in a very different business. And lastly, I would say the number one thing that I love about Foxhole, and it's in everything that we've done, is the culture. And we've built our ESOP around that, because at the end of the day, you can't deliver your mission. You can't take care of your partners. You can't take care of the government if you don't have a strong culture and a strong people to actually do the work. If you're a product company, you need good supply chain. Same thing goes with people. If you cannot supply the people and the talent that needs to get the job done because you're underpaying them, you've got a bad, toxic culture, you're not incentivizing them to grow, you don't have good leaders or good vision on what they're supposed to be doing and can manage their schedules properly, then you're not taking care of them. You're not going to be able to take care of anything else. And that's all I have to say.
All right. So, friends, can you, so we have a react emoji. Can we give a round of applause for what we had today. This is information. This is a master class that was given by our friends at Foxhole. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As always, these pearls of wisdom have landed somewhere in the depths of the minds of those who are really struggling. And we really appreciate you being open and honest with us through this conversation. I'm going to turn it over to Gabby to close us out.
All right. Well, thank you both. And well, thank you all actually for such a great conversation. And thank you to all the small businesses who joined us today. It seems like a lot of people appreciated what was said. And certainly, check out the series. We do have a few videos, like I said earlier, uploaded to YouTube. We do intend to have more up in the future. And we do host these events around every 2 months or so. So make sure you're in our small business database or our other distribution list so that you can get information on when the next one will be. This has been a great session, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful weekend.